What if the strongest defenses don't fall to bombs, but to something more silent and more deadly? In Ukraine, Pokrovsk was considered a fortress, a city built to withstand siege and break any attacker. Yet, in just a few days, this stronghold crumbled, not to a massive offensive, but to chaos from within. As the smoke settled, Ukrainian troops were seen abandoning positions en masse. They left behind not only critical equipment and supplies, but even wounded comrades. Reports described columns of soldiers moving without clear orders, some waving makeshift white flags in desperate hope to survive. There was no dramatic last stand, just a wave of withdrawal and confusion. The so-called impregnable city became a symbol of disorder, its defenses collapsing as morale and command broke down. Pokrovsk, once a pillar of the front line, was lost amid scenes of panic and retreat. But why do such collapses happen? If we blame only the enemy's strength, we risk missing the real danger. Each time we misunderstand what truly causes an army to break, whether it's loss of trust, fractured logistics, or shattering morale, we set ourselves up to repeat history's worst failures. The price isn't just territory, it's stability, resources, and lives themselves. So, beyond the official statements and reassuring headlines, what was really happening inside Pokrovsk as the walls fell? To find the answer, we have to look past the propaganda and examine the hidden cracks that led to Pokrovsk's downfall. How does a city once called a fortress become ground zero for flight and disorder? Pokrovsk was not just another dot on the map. It was the nerve center for logistics, the backbone of communications, and a symbol of resolve for the entire front. Its fall sent shockwaves far beyond the battlefield. For weeks, Russian forces pressed closer, tightening their grip with calculated precision. There were no sudden, dramatic assaults, just a relentless squeeze, a step-by-step encirclement that cut off supply lines and isolated the defenders. Every day, the noose tightened as fuel, ammunition, and information ran dry, eroding the city's ability to fight back. But the most decisive blow did not come from outside. Inside Pokrovsk, exhaustion was eating away at the defenders. Morale crumbled as orders became confusing or even contradictory. Commanders vanished at critical moments, and trust within the ranks evaporated. What appeared to be a stronghold was, in truth, riddled with cracks that widened with every passing day. When the collapse came, it was not a thunderclap, but a quiet, chaotic unraveling. Ukrainian troops abandoned positions en masse, scrambling to escape as panic replaced discipline. Equipment and supplies were left behind, along with wounded comrades. Instead of coordinated withdrawal, there was confusion, columns moving without clear orders, and desperate gestures for a ceasefire. Why does this matter? Because Pokrovsk's loss exposes how a system can rot from within before the enemy ever lands a decisive blow. Warning signs, breakdowns in supply, communication, and morale went unheeded. By the time pressure from outside became overwhelming, internal failures had already doomed the city. So what was the final spark that tipped Pokrovsk from slow decay into outright collapse? To answer that, we need to look at the cascading events that triggered the mass withdrawal. Let's unravel the chain reaction that turned a faltering defense into a full-blown rout, and see what really set off the exodus from Pokrovsk. The real enemy was not just across the front lines. It was inside the city itself. As the smoke thickened over Pokrovsk, chaos took hold long before enemy troops broke through. Soldiers received conflicting orders, some from commanders who soon vanished without a trace. Ammunition and supplies ran dry, leaving units paralyzed, desperate, and isolated. In this vacuum, discipline collapsed. Troops abandoned positions, some waving homemade white flags in surrender. Others simply fled, leaving behind equipment, supplies, and even wounded comrades, anything to escape the turmoil. Communication broke down entirely. Radios fell silent, orders stopped coming, and panic filled the void. What had been a tightly held defensive line dissolved into a stream of scattered, frightened fighters moving without direction or purpose. No matter how many weapons or words arrived from the west, They could not repair what was broken inside. Propaganda promised resilience, but reality was a collapse of trust and structure, a military unraveling from within. The sense of mission, the chain of command, even the belief in the cause itself, all faded in the chaos. Misreading such internal weaknesses can destroy not only armies, but entire nations. Pokrovsk's fall did not result from a single defeat. It was the inevitable endpoint of weeks, even months, of growing cracks inside the system. The lesson is clear. When morale shatters and trust evaporates, front lines become meaningless. And now, the ripple effects of Pokrovsk's collapse threaten to spread far beyond its ruined streets. The shockwaves from this defeat are already being felt on neighboring fronts, and they may change the entire course of the conflict. When one stronghold falls, what follows? The answer is rarely limited to a single loss. The fall of Pokrovsk did not just mark the collapse of one defensive line. It opened corridors that allowed Russian forces to push deeper, faster, and with less resistance than ever before. With Pokrovsk gone, the positions behind it are suddenly exposed. Supply routes are severed, reinforcements struggle to arrive, and morale among the remaining defenders sinks to new lows. Equipment is abandoned, wounded left behind, and entire units withdraw in confusion, creating a ripple effect that weakens the entire front. This one defeat sent shockwaves through Kiev's leadership. Official statements quickly shifted from confident promises of victory to a narrative focused on containing damage and minimizing losses. The language changed, no longer about retaking ground, but about saving what could still be saved. These images and admissions did not go unnoticed in Western capitals. Public and private confidence in Ukraine's ability to hold the line visibly wavered. Allies began to question continued support, debating whether their investments were being undercut by breakdowns in logistics, communication, and trust. As the reality of systemic failure set in, the risk of a broader withdrawal of aid became very real. Most alarming is the domino effect now at play. Each lost stronghold makes the next one more vulnerable. The loss of control spreads, infecting not only the battlefield, but also the political resolve behind it. If these lessons are ignored, it is not just a series of battles that may be lost, but the war itself. So what can be learned from this unraveling, and how might these hard lessons shape future strategy and survival? What keeps an army, or even a society, on its feet when comforting myths collapse? The answer is not better weapons or bolder headlines. It is discipline, trust, and tight organization that form the true backbone of any enduring force. Pokrovsk's fall showed us what happens when those pillars crack. No amount of firepower or external help can fill the void left by lost unity and broken command. Lasting strength comes from clear orders, honest reporting, and unwavering cohesion among troops and leaders. When communication breaks down and morale erodes, even the most advanced equipment becomes little more than abandoned metal. In Pokrovsk, units left their posts, confusion reigned, and command structures dissolved, proving that systemic cracks are deadlier than any enemy barrage. Trust is not a slogan. It is the glue holding together the will to resist, the ability to adapt, and the readiness to sacrifice. Once suspicion and disorder take root, defeat seeps in from within, long before the enemy overruns the gates. The lesson is clear. Ignoring these realities risks repeating the same fatal mistakes, whether on the battlefield or in any crisis demanding unity and resolve. So, facing this uncomfortable truth, what can we actually do to avoid such collapse in the future? Let's break down the practical steps leaders, soldiers, and citizens must take to rebuild the foundation that keeps any collective effort strong. Strength is forged from within, or lost in silence. The fall of Pokrovsk did not come from overwhelming force outside its walls, but from unraveling trust and exhaustion inside them. What looked like a stronghold was already hollowed out by shortages, confusion, and broken morale long before the final attack began. We are told to watch for tanks, missiles, and new offensives. But history is shaped less by what the enemy brings, and more by what rots away behind the lines. Commanders who vanish, orders that contradict, silent radios, and soldiers who choose surrender over senseless sacrifice. Pokrovsk is not just a battlefield lost. It is the clearest sign yet that systems break from within. Propaganda tells us to hold faith, to expect new reserves or miraculous regroupings. But the images of abandoned equipment and white flags speak louder than any official reassurances. Wars, like societies, are only as strong as the bonds and beliefs that hold people together. When those bonds snap, no amount of outside help can restore what has already fallen apart. The collapse of Pokrovsk reveals that front lines move not only on maps, but in minds. Your beliefs, your security, your understanding of history, all depend on seeing through comfortable illusions. If we misread such crises, we risk losing more than a city. We risk losing the truth itself. Ask yourself, what are the real threats to stability and survival? They may not be where the headlines tell you to look. Strength is not imposed from above. It grows, or withers, within. Will we learn from this warning, or repeat the same mistakes elsewhere?